So, Gopal, how are you?
Good.
Good. Yeah, I'm good. Right, thank you for doing this with me. It's very good. Yeah, it's been a while. So, can you please tell me, let's just dive a little bit deeper into what Satshar actually does.
Oh yeah, sure. So before even getting into it, let me just introduce myself, right?
Yeah.
So Gopala Krishnan Narayana Murthy, it just goes Gopal. I'm currently working as a lecturer at the University of Liverpool Management School, and so moving on to Satshar. So it's broadly a firm, like a startup, which provides decision intelligence from space. That's the tagline we use. And my association with them has been to understand how disruptive technologies and innovative data sources can be used for decision making.
Right.
That's roughly interesting.
That's a really good thing, to be fair. So because there's quite a big emphasis at the minute on India's agriculture. Yeah. So because if you look into generally the actual website, you guys, as we were speaking previously off camera, you've quite heavily focused on the actual providing the service to banks and insurance companies. Can we just delve a little bit into deep of why that is and what was the issue that this actually tackles?
Sure. Yeah. So the motivation broadly comes from lack of data for like stakeholders like insurance firms and banking, who provide financial support for farmers in India. So unlike the Western context, the developed countries, India, the land holdings are hugely like micro in nature, like usually farmers hold less than 1 hectare land, majority of them, and monitoring them individually becomes much more demanding in comparison to the Western context, where like large hectares of land are held by one single farmer, so monitoring becomes much more achievable, right? So then we need to have innovative data sources to act as proxy for recording the farming activities of farmers, which can be used by these banking and insurance agencies to make decisions, right? So that was the motivation. So there are a huge number of farmers who have micro or like less than 1 hectare land, and how can the insurance companies and funding agencies like banking sector can monitor them? So that's the underpinning motivation. And so what Satshar came up with is to see how imagery data, satellite imagery data, can be used as one of those data sources to signal the performance of farmers as well as the farming land, and give insights for insurance companies and banking agencies to make decisions on processing insurance claims as well as disbursing loans for them. So that's broadly what the firm Satshar does, using satellite imagery data as the baseline and then building onto it with several other data sources to make these decisions. So that's where I think there's been a lot of traction, and a lot of stakeholders are highly excited about this, and I think they're getting their solution approach more and more mature towards that.
So this also kind of come about with the more access to kind of satellite imagery data, and a lot of access to satellites as well recently. One thing else I'd also like to kind of point out is, you kind of explained that fantastically there, but the actual ethical side of that comes with this as well, because as we kind of explained a little bit further, like a lot of these small farmers, it was going to, because cash is the predominant form of currency to these small farmers. There's not really much access to credit, and because of that, not being able to do that, they've not got really credit worthiness, and that's kind of forced people to go to the loan sharks or people who are charging very high interest rates, and it's actually having negative effects on these farmers. So this is the good thing what Satshar was actually doing. It's improving massively, and you're benefiting the farmers, and you also, I guess, these insurance companies and banking companies are having a greater access to this new market that's pretty much untapped, because the agriculture sector accounts for 50% of the total workforce in India.
So I'm very glad to see that you've done a lot of homework on it. Like, you pretty much took several of the keywords that we use in our research projects, like credit worthiness of the farmers and like majority of them having like livelihood from farming and things like that, right? So that's very true. The traditional system, if you look at it, so it was pretty much driven by crop cutting experiments, which was done in the field, and it was highly resource demanding and had a lot of uncertainties in the data. So in one of the papers that we are working on, we are talking about how satellite imagery and advanced disruptive technology driven data can reduce the uncertainties and thereby improve the decision making, both by reducing type 1 and type 2 errors. So that's one of the projects we're working on. So what we do there is kind of comparing the traditional system with the new system that has been built and kind of showing what were the uncertainties and errors that were prevalent in the previous data sources, and how the new data source that's being built on the satellite imagery is going to tackle them and is overcoming most of the majority of the issues associated with the previous data set, and how this will in turn enable insurance firms to take quicker decisions on claim disbursement, and also to make accurate decisions, to fund farmers who have suffered the loss, and to also not fund farmers who have not done much or not have incurred any risk in the process, right? So that in turn boosts a lot of confidence in the decisions that they make, because at the end, accurate data and robust analysis around it is definitely going to make their decisions much more quicker than just postponing it for the lack of confidence in that decision itself, right? So that is what I think is a definite contribution from the offering that Satsure is providing to the insurance firms, and that's where the value is, I think. And the social, as you mentioned, the societal benefit is huge. Like, it's going to benefit so many farmers, and who will be at a huge risk and loss when they just skip a season because of lack of funding, right? On the other hand, when the quicker decisions can be made, they get access to funds very quickly, which in turn can be put to use for the subsequent season. And if that's not happening, then you will see farmers committing suicides, which has been highly recorded in media articles because of lack of funds and lack of resources to conduct farming itself. And I think it has a lot to do with the decisions that the stakeholders within the ecosystem make, and how quickly and accurately can they make it. So I think we are at this time where the data from different innovative sources such as satellite imagery and other data sources can be combined together and can be made to speak with each other, so that quicker and accurate decisions can be made. And I think Satsure is on that track of contribution and is progressing really well to achieve those targets for broadly. If you see, it has a lot of implications for social development as well, which is what we focus in our research projects too.
So that sounds like a lot of streamline and a lot of efficiency to this whole actual industry, which has been kind of suffered a bit of neglect in the past few decades from the Indian government. One thing that I found interesting as well is how the different challenges that sometimes the partners out in India have had to actually get these farmers on board. I know the insurers and the bankings are the main customers for this, with particularly in the loan cycle management. But however, the way you made a really good analogy off camera, we were saying essentially it's the same way that Google Chrome works. Is the fact that the same way that the cookies it's benefiting the main customers and we are just the bystanders and we're helping the process of data. But obviously it's a bit different, kind of just getting us to go on and basically use Google Chrome and getting them to get obliged by this, and because it's not just satellite imagery from correct, there's a lot of drone imagery data going on as well to get a deeper insight to soil. It's a bit more. How has it difficult been to kind of get these farmers on board? To some, as you'll have with any type of people, some people are more in tune to technology, some people are a bit more resistant. What's been the main challenges of getting these people on board? So
even though I'm not much on the field, so based on my interaction with colleagues and also the research projects that we've conducted so far, I think there are like it's as you rightly pointed out, it's mainly the insurance companies, right? They are the beneficiaries of the value that we offer. So how can insurance companies gather more accurate data to make their decisions accurate? So that's broadly what they are trying to deal with, and they usually do some data gathering efforts in the field. One of them could be one of them that they've been doing is crop cutting experiments in collaboration with the government, and they do conduct like field level experiments by taking a specific land in different regions of the map and then try to understand how much the productivity of that particular land could be from that experiment that they have conducted, and then extrapolated for different level or scale of land, and then try to predict the insurance claim that has to be given, right? So they've been already doing this data collection in the field, and farmers are introduced to this because they know that insurance companies are gathering data so that they can dismiss the claims. So farmers know that data gathering happens for providing insurance. On the other hand, when satellite images come into place, farmers become passive contributors. So they're not going to give really any data to make the decision, right? You can do certain pilot studies and like field experiments to corroborate your results from the analytics that you perform on satellite imagery, but broadly I think it's the communication with the insurance firm who take care of the downstream requirements from then on if there is any data to be acquired, and also, as you rightly mentioned, there are several other sensors also put in place to gather more data to capture insights from farm to fork, from the time you start your agri process in the beginning to the point when it reaches to the customer. So the traceability and other stuffs, to achieve them, we need to deploy several other sensors. But just for the sake of insurance, along with satellite imagery, there are few other data sources like weather, and then like the soil conditions and things like that, which are taken into account, and these are being gathered parallelly, and that's something that Satcher as a firm is also thinking: should we collect data individually for every problem that they try to solve, or basically work on the satellite imagery and let the clients collect data that's necessary to additional data that's necessary to solve their problems. So that's kind of a trade-off that one firm has to make depending upon what is their competitive capabilities in the market and what they want to be known for, and I think they are still trying to mature on it to see what are the different data sources that one has to combine for making a robust decision. And to add on to the from the perspective of farmers, I think it's still going to be the same. They are basically going to be passive contributors and do some interviews and things like that. But but definitely their approval is necessary, and that's something that has to be taken care of by an insurance firm or that matter any user who wants to use this data to make a decision. But I'm sure that the farmers are going to be more and more like passive contributors for their own benefit.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So I've got to go further now. One thing I'd kind of like to highlight a little bit as well is, was mentioned previously, so in the past few decades, despite it being like a major source of income and apparently a lot of people working in agriculture, it only seems that now that India's kind of built recent years, India's actually taken more of an interest of how pivotal this is, and this has provided a great opportunity for entrepreneurial firms like Satshar to come in. I've seen there's the aspect of, when I was doing the research, the Agri Udan program, which is a lot of thing which helps promote enterprises like Satshar. With it comes to, well, Modi's promised this, the Indian Prime Minister recently, so he's promised to increase farmers' income double by 2022. It's also got an interesting fact, which I don't know how this is going to go, but trying to cut the level of farmers down to around just below 20% by 2022. So this is, it seems, when I was looking at all this research, it reminded me of the tales that I heard from the American Wild West, where everyone wants their pit of land, and that's what it seems a bit like what it's within India at the minute, and it's become very saturated, and like you said, everyone has their own kind of acre of land. And whilst it seems that this is a bigger attention by the Indian government, this surely stands in good stead for Satshar. If the more attention that goes in, like you're saying, you're already cooperating with the government, what's kind of the future things that you think that the government should be doing to help promote the agriculture industry even further?
Okay, so I think there are two things that was mentioned, right? One is what's something the government is doing, and how is it going to key in as provide inputs for startups like Satcher and who are trying to build efficient processes around agriculture in general, right? So the other one was to talk about what I think the government, what more things can government do in future, right? So to answer the first part, I believe it's definitely an ecosystem that's maturing. If you see, traditionally, like agriculture and farmers were not in the limelight, so they the corporatization and multinational companies coming in was given more priority, which still says to be one of the priorities. But the good thing is agriculture is also reaching the limelight, and they're giving a lot of priority to it, and that's something you will observe also in the country context of India, that a lot of people, like educated people, are also are wishing to do agri as their main business in future, and wanting to invest education and wanting to get experience around it to do that, and a lot of experiences are coming up in the media articles around it. So it's in general, like the country itself is giving a lot of attention, both the citizens as well as the government, to agriculture, and the good thing is that the startups have also kind of understood that, and I think it's kind of a convoluted loop. Which one came first is still not clear. It could be that the startups had some value offering around it, and then the government policies also came around it, and then both of them keyed in and they went to a different level. That's also a possibility. So I think it's the right time for firms and startups like Satcher and to contribute to the value achievements of farmers, and they have a lot of other opportunities around this to make this process, which has been highly inefficient or kind of having non-value adding stuff present in the processes. How can they make it much more efficient? And I think these startups have identified that opportunity clearly well, and they're trying to work on that opportunity to make business proposition to different clients and stakeholders on that matter. And then government is highly supportive of it, if you could see it. So there are usually regular events happening trying to identify top 20 innovative startups who are doing really good contribution to agri income, like scaling up of income for farmers and scaling up of productivity of agriculture and things like that. And they're recognizing them, and they're trying to provide them proper platforms and connections and networking opportunities so that they can scale up much higher from a single state to multiple states, from single crop to multiple crops, from a particular type of a land to different types of lands and things like that. So that's broadly what the government is offering the ecosystem for startups like Satcher to do. And in the future, I think it's kind of already in a scale, in a curve where it's kind of scaling up exponentially, and I wish it to be scaling up exponentially also, and I believe there are several other, like it's change of mindset, broadly speaking, where these data, traditionally it was an individual who was making the decision of disbursing a claim, right now it's data which is going to tell, and which needs to be supported by an individual who was making a decision on their own in the past. Now the data is going to provide recommendations for them what could be a potentially correct decision, and they need to trust it. And I think that transition process is definitely going to be time consuming, and also like the change management aspects associated with it needs to be well tackled, I believe, because it's still government officials and government offices which
it's a bit of bureaucracy there as well.
Yeah, it's that's how it's been known to be, and I'm sure there are a lot of model government offices which can act as an example and drivers for several other offices to learn from. But I think that's one of the regions which has to be very carefully tackled. And the second is also to do with the privacy associated with these data sources that is being generated.
Right.
So how can that be ensured in the long run, and can be ensured in such a way that it's more and more used for the benefit and the growth of the end consumer, which is the farmer here. And also the citizens of the country. So I think those are the few things which needs to be very carefully addressed in the coming years, with maybe like new policies and new institutions and things like that.
It's a little bit of a caveat here, but so in the aspect of the farmers, it's because privacy over here in the West is very prevalent. Is that much that's aware of over in India, especially in that aspect?
So I think that it's getting much more prevalence than it is, and data is, so the regulations are being transferred, right? Even though there is a lot of customization and contextualization required for the regulations from the West, but we do learn a lot from there and then see how that could be applied here. And it's not that we also have our own new things coming up from the ground level and then trying to integrate it with already existing things. So in terms of privacy, I think it will gain its own priority and be given highest weightage as we progress. But right now it's more value offering, trying to see how can the existing inefficiencies be tackled by keeping privacy by giving it its own importance, but keeping it not at the back end, basically, right? So having that at the back end and then trying to see how, with those regulations and frameworks in place, what value offering can be achieved. And I think and there are new innovations where maybe the privacy aspects have not been still thought through, and I think new data sets and things like that which is being gathered, like, and that will mature with its own process and how things progress, and I think time will be the best, like, will provide the best answer and will show us how to mature it and how to fine tune it further. But I see a lot of positivity around it because the right data is being tapped for making the decisions much more quicker now, and I think many decision makers are open for absorbing it, and also the end consumers are seeing it with a value that it offers than seeing it from the breach of privacy or stuff like that. So that's more promising in nature, and I think it's more on the positive side of the growth.
Yeah, this whole kind of technology, it's been used, it's not massively new, it's been growing. It seems like it's the next revolution really in kind of agriculture. Like you had the influence of machines in the late 1900s, and now there's farmers across the globe are all using this, and satellite technology and drone technology, and it's helping best predict weather patterns. And this kind of caveats to the next question is that one thing that SatShards are doing and the technology that it's provided is helping combat crops against climate change, which is a major impact not only around the world but specifically in India. When doing a bit of research, most people know about how important the Indian monsoon is to the agriculture. When I was doing a little bit more research, it's like 60% of all crops are fed by rainwater, and in the past 5 years the monsoon's been late, it's been a bit more erratic. So this is where this technology is actually needed, and it's actually not only benefiting, it's helping banks, it's also helping people maybe plan the way that they grow their crops a bit better. This was in the aspect of climate change, you guys seem to be doing really well in kind of identifying and exploring where the potentials would be. What's the next steps for that? Is it in the elements of, is there any further steps to help prevent, use this data any further to prevent against climate change?
I think that will be kind of a spillover benefit, I believe. Like, climate change is inevitable, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's already happening. So how can farmers be guarded from the changes, and how can they be supported, right? Like you rightly pointed out, there are several unique things to the Indian context itself, which in turn makes the transfer of technology from West to the context much more difficult. So it's not that you just take the solution that's been already successfully working in a particular context to Indian context and try to apply it. I'm sure that's going to fail.
Yeah, you can't just apply something from one end and put it straight there.
The two immediate customization that's needed is, which I mentioned already, like the farmers here are holding small land holdings, like less than 1 hectare. So you can't apply the algorithms as well as the data available there directly here, and it's not going to give you any usable data sets and also like usable insights. And the second thing is like monsoon. Like in India, farmers, majority of them are heavily dependent on rainfall, and they need to happen at the time that's being usually forecasted. And if they miss that, then the crops are going to be like, they're not going to have any productivity in that particular season and going to incur a huge loss, right? So these two things itself is highly unique to this particular context, and this contextual intelligence needs to get into the decision analytics that they apply and the decisions that they make, right? So one of the examples, actually drawing from what I've been describing from previous questions, is the usage of satellite imagery analytics for decision intelligence, especially in this context of agriculture and insurance providers, is itself a support that's being provided for farmers who are passive and like voiceless stakeholders, primarily who are poor in nature, to safeguard and kind of guard them from the climate change, right? If a farmer undergoes a kind of lack of productivity in his or her own farm during that particular season because of lack of rainfall, then can insurance providers quickly assess it, quickly estimate it, evaluate it, and disperse the claim from them. That is something that SatSure is kind of enabling, right? So climate change is happening, farmers experience difficulty because of it, because they're dependent on monsoon rains. But can they be supported quickly to come back from that and then kind of get into the next season and start producing and start farming and provide growing crops to run their livelihood, right? So that's something we can really offer. And so basically generating and kind of innovatively creating ecosystems that can potentially support farmers by keeping them in the center, and safeguarding them from these impact of this climate change and influence of variation in rainfall, for example, and all that, and how can they be kind of put into a secure shell so that they can still continue to do what they have been planning to do for running their livelihood, and safeguarding them from all these externalities and things like that, which is potentially achievable through the data sets, innovative data sets like satellite imageries that's being available now.
Right, that's actually really interesting. Yeah, it's one thing that's, I guess it's not as particularly is how is it good with communicating this data to the farmers then, if the insurance companies have this satellite data and also that's providing them, and they see, right, there's going to be a heavy flow of rain or like a dispersed burst of rain or the monsoon's going to be late, because it doesn't seem that there's that much technology that's in with the farmers at the minute. How is this communicated to make sure that they've got it as quickly as possible and it's more efficient?
Like in terms of farmers contributing to the data? Or?
So in terms of, let's say, the data analyzes it from the satellite and they see that a weather pattern that may be harmful to the crops may be coming in certain points. For previous generations in India, from what I understand, is that they've based it generally on what they've had an estimation of, like what they can see independently of what they've been passed on from generations of lessons have been taught. It's just something's happening and the data goes to the insurance companies that there's going to be a storm or something that's going to negatively affect the crops. What's the communication channels like to get that information to farmers?
So I think it's the end beneficiary here is still. The end beneficiary is the farmer, but the immediate data user of the insight from the imageries and other data sets is basically the firms like insurance and banking agencies, right? So it's not something that has to be, because at the end, if you see farmer plans for a season, and then like the change in weather or like absence of rainfall or those kind of things are something that comes after the farmer has already put himself and invested resources, himself or herself and invested resources in that season, right? So they have incurred some risk already in the process, and can they be protected from a flood after they have invested in the field? Not sure, but can they be insured? Can they be provided with the claim disbursement quickly so that they can come out of the flood and then kind of start working on their subsequent seasons? That's doable, and that's where I think SAT should pitches in, rather than providing the information and forecasting of weather, because I think the farmers, that will be kind of data for the farmers, but can they change things depending upon that? I'm not sure, because it's something that they've already invested in the field, and how much can they safeguard from the field to protect from these floods or drought for that matter, right? So having said that, I think it's more to work with the other partners who can provide them with a safer ecosystem, so that these externalities, which even when they are predicted, can be of less use for them, because they cannot change things in their agricultural practices immediately based on huge rainfall that's going to come in next 3 days or like next 1 week, because they've already invested on it. So how can the insurance firms take this into account and can kind of monitor the farms that have invested during that period before the flood has come, so that they can reimburse them immediately after the floods, right? So that's where the focus predominantly has been, rather than giving insights for the farmers on the update of the weather and forecast that's generated. But I think there is one more thing which we are working on, is how satellite imageries can also be used for humanitarian relief operations once the disaster has struck a particular region. For instance, SATSHO did this for the region of state of Kerala in India.
Oh, right.
So like last year when there was a huge flood that basically brought entire Kerala to its knees, like recorded in one of the media articles, and SATSHO created quickly a portal using satellite imagery data and combining it with several other data sources, and try to have that as a common portal for the rescue team to conduct relief operations. So that's something that's big.
Really
so it's
fantastic.
Yeah, it's all happened in such a short period of time, and the entire set of data sources that was used to generate this or to create this platform were passively collected. None of these data sources were actually actively collected for this particular disaster. They were pre-existing, and they were something that usually getting captured irrespective of whether the disaster happened or not. So that's the beauty of satellite imagery, which is something that's available at your disposal at any time you want to tap it and use it. You can really do it, because what we have seen is majority of the data collection mechanisms and telecommunication networks actually get failed when a disaster gets strikes.
Because they're all based on the ground, aren't they?
Exactly. So you cannot get data from those sources to make really quick relief operations, and rescue teams provide strategies and execution locations and prioritize sites for conducting rescue operations, right? So on the other hand, satellite imagery supported with weather data on rainfalls and inundation of water, we can really create a helpful portal which can help the rescue teams to prioritize regions for rescue operations, right? So that's something they did for the Kerala region when the flood struck them. So these are several other applications that SatSure is trying to put to use in addition to the agricultural context. The focus is more on the insurance and financing landscape. And on the humanitarian front, they're seeing how the rescue operations can be made much more agile using the data insights that's available. And there is few other applications like how can we prioritize these sites for installing solar value chain. So that's again one thing that we are working on, and I think
there was one about hydropower as well that was doing a bit of research, and that looks very interesting. So identify where bits.
So basically, whichever requires a large area analytics and you need large area monitoring, and then try to prioritize particular locations and to monitor them and to provide maybe a credit score or provide maybe a score of productivity for that particular land or depending upon what your application is. I think that's doable, and that's what they've been focusing, and that's why they call the decision intelligence from space. That's broadly what they offer. The application could be for a farmer who's the end beneficiary through the insurance company or the banking agency, or for creating more like green energy by solar farm installations, or for conducting humanitarian relief operations by collaborating with the government to build a portal for the rescue teams. So we have broadly spectrum of applications, and we're basically actually writing up papers in collaboration with SatSure on different applications of the list of applications that I just mentioned.
You'll have to send me that over. That sounds like a really good read.
Oh, yeah, sure. I can do that.
But yeah, that point that you're highlighting there, the fact that you can, there's so many purposes for this type of data. And obviously there's, like you said, when it comes to like telephone communications, that's when it goes down. And this could be generally applied to all over the world. That everywhere's kind of suffering with the increased more volatile weather temperatures. And this, hopefully that could be an avenue where SatSure could go down in the future. The only issue with that, it could be profitability, and where you could actually get money income from that. You currently found like a really good way to use the satellite technology for the benefit of pretty much a wide range of parties, and hopefully there could be governments or even private insurers, if they could find a way to do it, to invest in that aspect of technology and use it for that humanitarian aid. And then also with the aspects of, we was talking about solar energy, and we were speaking about hydropower, the aspects of being able to identify greater spots and provided to the insurance companies that can be more capitalised and capitalise more energy that's coming in instead of the aspect of wasting it.
Basically giving confidence to the investors, saying that this is the level of energy generation that can happen in a particular site. If any investor wants to invest in a solar farm, they would really want to forecast how much energy is going to get generated and how much is going to be the cash flow, so that they can really plan their investment well, which in turn reduces the risk associated with it and brings it closer to what is achievable in terms of returns, and thereby basically gives them more realistic perspective of the investment. And I think that will boost more and more investors to come forward to invest in such solar farms and things like that, which was previously was kind of a black box, which was not clearly predicted to guide them in the process of investment. So also in addition to it, monitoring also becomes much more handy. So once you install in a solar farm, and then how can you can really monitor it like regularly to see the how the infrastructure is being protected. Are there any kind of damages to the infrastructures and things like that? So basically satellite imagery can be used as one of the key data sets across the value chain of these applications that I've been mentioning, which in turn would reduce extensively the resources that's being traditionally used, and also make it much more effective and efficient to make decisions and to leapfrog certain processes in place and things like that.
It's just stuff like solar panel energy and hydrogen. Is that a growing market in India then, or is it?
So so it's a lot of installations have happened in certain locations, but I think there has been several other barriers also in place that restricts the key financial stakeholders to really buy in this idea of investing in solar, because the return comes more long term, and you basically get into the positive side of your positive returns maybe like after a few years, right? So there are several uncertainties in between, and how can monitoring and data be made available so that they can ensure that they reach to that level of converting their investment into providing positive returns, right? So that's where I think these kind of new ecosystems which is coming in place can basically help them to really see that doable, and thereby buy in more of their confidence to proceed with it. So in our paper we discuss all of these, and then we try to give them a demonstration of how this has been actually done for the Bangalore region in a conceptual way. We show how Bangalore region has been like evaluated and assessed for solar productivity performance at the different locations, and kind of prioritized for the investors to choose which one to go for. And obviously there are several other ground level constraints and socio-technical constraints that which in like access to roads and policy level requirements required to be in place in that region, and also government support and also local people support, because it depends on the property rights are very different in India. So how can one walk it around and make it possible, right? So those things pitch in, but at least it gives you a better framework to start with, and better visualization to identify the areas of priority and work around those areas alone. Yeah.
That's good. So kind of go a bit towards the end now. Where would you think Satra will be in the aspect of the impact it's having in 5 years' time?
So I kind of agree with the statement that says like any business model or any value offering that works in India will work anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of anything that you say about India is true, and the opposite is equally true, and so both of them are reality in the context. You can see really poor people at the same time really rich, affluent ones in India, right? So if you can have a business model that can cater to this diverse market and kind of diverse uncertainties or very different types of risk prevalent there, and kind of if you can tackle all those and make it work, I think then scaling it up is going to be much more feasible. I would say I'm not going to say it's easy, but I think it's going to be feasible with your experiences that you've accrued by making it work in the Indian context. And scaling it within the states in India is very different, and I think they have different governments, even though centrally there is one government, but states
So
also
many
have their
people.
own government.
When you have so many people there, it's down to be differences in culture and everything that's going to be. It's not everything's not going to work in the same
Exactly.
one.
So scaling within the states itself is going to be a very good capability building experience for the firm, and also like that will in turn key in when they're scaling across the countries, I think, and then globally providing value for different clients up there, and I think scaling also the same value offering to different country contexts. They definitely need their adaptations and customizations, and I think that's broadly I would say Satsure. The vision for Satsure is to become a decision intelligence provider, right, using satellite imagery as the base data. Why I say it as base data is because depending upon the intelligence that's needed for a particular problem, you might need to have several other secondary data sources that has to be like kind of amalgamated with the satellite imagery data. But broadly, I think their competencies would be on providing decision intelligence using the satellite imagery data as the primary source of data, and broadening it up to different industries and different contexts. And
We've already spoken about how it can be broadened already, and that's, like you said, in the different industries. Yeah. One thing that we kind of did speak about previously was, so you look at, there's offices in India and London, and you said London is a potential new avenue for in the future where, England, around the UK could be an avenue where Satsure could expand into.
Satsure has so basically we have so St. Gallen is one, Dubai, London, and Bangalore. Right? These are the 4 places where we registered. But in London, primarily the activities or the clients are from India. So the problems that we are solving are basically driven from the Indian context, and this, as I mentioned, the scalability is achievable, and it's much more by adapting to the requirements of clients from these different regions and making it much more efficient and cost effective, I think scalability is definitely achievable, and tapping or kind of listening to the market, let's say in UK or in let's say Middle East, and trying to understand what their requirements are and how the available capabilities can be put to use for solving their problems. I think that's definitely doable, but one at a time is better. So let's get the foot presence much more stronger in the Indian context, and trying to scale it up much bigger. I think the identification of opportunities in the global context is also something that Satcher is looking for and trying to work around it. But I think given that the amount of effort that's being put in for solving problems in the Indian context, I think the spillover benefits are huge, and scalability is definitely achievable in the next few years. It's not just me who's seen it. Several of the competitions and several of the events that has happened in the recent past has been a significant testimonial for that, which has recognized Satcho's work, and they've been awarded, and you can find them on the websites. And
I saw that on your LinkedIn.
So I think it's definitely going to be on the upward trend, and looking forward to see where they reach. And as a researcher, want to be a part of that and kind of get as much as data to document and answer interesting research questions. I think that's broadly what my lens of view on it would be, and I wish them all the best of luck. Yeah.
Right, last question. It's just a bit of a calmer one now. If you give any bit of advice about anything, could be relevant to whatever it is, what would it be? It doesn't have to be Satcher, it could be anything that you think.
Anything, okay. So it's going to be open, and I think sticking to certain practices and following it regularly to be efficient is fine, but at the same time to be open for disruptive innovations. And I think listen to new people, just like how I did with you when you approached me for doing an interview. I think everyone comes with interesting ideas, and I really like the setup you have put forward here, and really looking forward to the output and how this is going to be looking like. And I think it's being open, and I think the current setting where the breakthrough innovations happen just in a day, and I think things change immediately after it. And I think being open and accommodative is definitely going to be good for not just the firms but also the individuals, and I think will help them grow more mature in terms of building capabilities and learning new stuffs. And I think all of them will come under the tagline of being open, and that's broadly what I would suggest. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for this.
Thanks.
It's been great. If anyone wants to listen to this or watching this wants to find out more about Satcher, just go to the website.
Reach out. Definitely visit the website, and that's one of the ways you can learn more, and reach out to any one of us. I think we'll be happy to share with you more details if you are aligned and really interested to know stuffs. And I think we're pretty much open. As I said, be open. I think as a firm, we are really open for collaborations and
evident by today.
Exactly. So I think that's something we look forward to, listening to like-minded peoples and also not like-minded peoples.
I think that's a very important thing as well.
How different they are. And I think, so that's what I look forward to, and feel free to reach out to us. And I think, Harris, you've done a fabulous background work, I believe. You've read a lot of stuff, and
thank you.
And I was very impressed with your citations on different unique things from the Indian context, and I think that's something we wrote in papers. I was really glad to see that. It's also something you've observed from your readings, and I really enjoyed this conversation, and I wish you good luck with this initiative.
Thank you very much.
Of recordings and conversations with multiple people, and hope it keys in a lot of food for thought for you. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, hopefully Satcher goes on a little bit more and we could be talking again.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Fantastic. Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the show, feel free to subscribe and share, and give the show a 5-star rating on all the podcast apps. Thank you.